Rub it over your belly.
Kyle Kistner is an Army veteran. He has been a cannabis advocate for over half a decade, and he is now working feverishly day by day, teaching people about the plant, about how they can get connected with it both professionally, politically, and personally. And he helps them also get their medical cards and gets them legal so that they can have their own flower or their own medicine. Today he's going to teach you his method and how he prefers to do RSO, Rick Simpson oil. One of the main things that you'll see is that we are outside. We had this weird flux of cold ass weather out of nowhere that came and got us. It's been really nice up until the day where we just had snow hit us. But for that reason, I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to let Kyle get going on this. So go ahead and tell him about you and RSO.
Sure. So I'll just try to give a quick down and dirty. And it's sometimes difficult for me to achieve brevity, but I will be striving profusely, I guess. So I got involved with really being a cannabis advocate, like you said, over 5 years ago. And 2017, I had my first experience with people who had taken RSO for really severe terminal issues, everything from melanoma, stage 4, like having been given less than a year to live, to children with like Dravet syndrome and things of that nature. And just seeing the effectiveness of the oil, not just for their condition that they're suffering from, but also it seemed to actually improve whole health. A lot of people will tell you that when they go on taking the oil that they lose weight because it's a metabolic regulator, among other things. And I think that has to do a lot with certain terpenoid compounds and cannabinoid combinations. That's a little maybe a bit beyond what even I know, which is only a small bit, but I'm sure you're going to see people today who do know more about specific stuff like that. And so if you got specific such questions, please do fire them out. But I first discovered the effectiveness of this because, number one, I've struggled with opioid addiction in the past, as well as chronic pain and GI problems, pretty severe upper and lower GI problems. I have IBS as well as GERD and gastroparesis. In any case, the best thing I've honestly found, other than the plethora of antacid medications and so forth I've been given at the VA, RSO pretty much within a couple of days of taking it, like regulates upper and lower to where I'm having regular movements, no constipation, not as much heartburn and so forth, unless I eat anything crazy spicy, of course. But in any case, once I had tried that, and I wanted to get on learn how to make some more of it myself. And it turns out that it's very, very easy, and we're going to show you a way to do it. Overall time, it does take a while, but the steps aren't that much, as I'll show you here in just a second. So the first thing you'll do, and there are different schools of thought on this. You good, man?
Yeah.
All right. Some people will say that your crock pot's going to get hot enough to take care of decarboxylation. I personally, I'm not 100% sure if it does get hot enough for total decarboxylation. Other folks prefer, they would rather make sure they achieve full potency, so the decarb first. And it really, like I said, it's something you can kind of play with, because really at the end of the day, what it boils down to is you can preserve more of the terpenoid compounds if you relied on the lower temperature method. Of course, utilizing the fact that different terpenes and cannabinoids will evaporate at different temperatures. And again, I don't know all those numbers. I just know that that is the case. I like to achieve more full potency because it seems to be most effective for myself. So I always do it with a decarb first before I do my rinse. And the rinse is when you wash it with the Everclear. Now, you should know that this is compliant with Article 14 of the rules of Article 14, of the Missouri Constitution. Basically, you're not allowed to use volatile, like combustible chemicals. And while Everclear can be highly flammable, it is a food safe solvent, and there is an exception for that. Other solvents you can use are, of course, water, and you can use solventless. And I'm sure all these methods, and of course you can infuse lipids and things of that nature, and all the stuff you've been seeing today. So we're going to jump right into this. You can use the oven to decarb. If you do that, I believe it's, oh, help me out here because I'm gonna fuck up the numbers, but I'm gonna mess up the numbers. But okay, 240, like 45 minutes.
You didn't mess up the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you
240 degrees of 45 minutes. Now some of that is a little bit dependent on atmospheric pressure, or like your which I think is dependent on like your altitude. Again, I'm not a freaking meteorologist. I don't know. I just know that my buddy, a friend of mine in Colorado Springs, when he would make it, his cook down times were different than my own. So, just take that for what it is. And it's the same thing with the decarboxylation.
I think the other thing with decarb is that because you've got different moisture contents, different oil contents, the decarb is going to always be a little bit different, ideally for every flour.
Sure. And when you do that in the oven, I always like to cover it. You'll do it on a baking sheet. It's best to break up. It's more labor intensive, or you can get just a basic grinder. It's not 3-stage, and just make sure you bang it out real good. But I usually break up my flour by hand. I was fortunate enough to come across some shake, so there's not a whole lot of breaking up by hand. The reason being is you want to preserve more of the trichomes and so forth. You don't want to like lose any of that when, like, if you got a 3-stage grinder and you forget that you got keef collected in the bottom, you can lose out on some stuff. I break it up by hand, spread it on the cookie sheets, put a piece of foil over top of it, and then when you pull it out of the oven, this is just something fun I like to do. When I pull the tin foil off, I take a big inhalation in just to get all like those terpenes and stuff that have evaporated off. And I noticed I do get like a little bit of just like a little rush, not like a high or anything, but it's just you feel kind of good for a moment. And so I recommend giving that a shot, just because. Why not? Didn't mean to rhyme there. In any case, continuing. For convenience purposes, and actually just to show you, just to talk about the fact that you can use something like an active gear guide. These are like $150. You can get them off the internet, I believe. And I noticed if I decarb in this, that the smell, and this is going to be the most significant part that's going to smell in terms of maybe alerting neighbors. If you live in an apartment building or so on and so forth, it's going to be when you do this process. So if you had one of these and you decarb in it, it works pretty good. It's got a decarb function. It does it in about an hour and a half, and it doesn't smell as much. You'll still smell it, but not as much. Anyways.
And Kyle, do you want to tell people why we're, again, just for folks that are cycling through, why we're outside?
We are outside because of the last part of the process. You're going to use a non-flame heat, like a flameless heat source, either a double boiler or a rice cooker or a crock pot, to cook down the ethanol, and that creates alcohol vapors that can be unpleasant. I don't think unless you're doing large amounts, it's not enough in the amounts that would be toxic, but you still don't just want to stink up your house with it smell like rubbing alcohol, basically.
Got it. So would it be for people, instead of just completely going outside, could they comfortably set up ventilation in a house somehow, by a window? Or?
Generally what I do is I'll put it near somewhere like a large, kind of like a window, and maybe like somewhere that like it's got good airflow, or like even like a little, I like to put a small fan, not directly over it, but just kind of directing air this way, just something to kind of get the air going out. Or if like I do it in my kitchen, so I'll open a couple windows, right, and I'll get like a fan, like a floor fan going, just to have airflow going through there. I don't like to get the fan going too much around this unless I got the lid on, just because I have pets, and if you've spent a day in the life as a stoner with pets, you already know what I'm about to say. You'll get hairs all over and everything. Just something to consider. When you decarb cannabis, I'm sure you guys have already seen some today. It'll look kind of like so. kind of have kind of a nutty smell maybe to it, and even kind of look kind of brownish.
Smell-o-vision.
Right. But and you could technically just eat this. Probably be better if you threw it in some butter or something like that, or if you made firecrackers with it. I don't know if someone's demonstrating that, but it would be cool. That's when you put it on peanut butter. I'm getting off topic. Anyways, so this is the part that's probably the most labor intensive, and I'm gonna be trying to be real careful, don't spill any. But you get a mason jar. Works best. A couple mason jars actually. This is about a half an ounce of shake. You can use nugs if you want. The yield will probably be maybe a little better. The yield will be a little bit better, not a whole heck of a lot. I mean, but the quality will probably be better and all that stuff. But I mean, one thing that's worth mentioning, and one of the reasons why it is pressing, is that an ounce of flour will generally yield about 3.5 grams of oil, which, so you know, it means if you really wanted to do a full, what they would say is like a full round of cancer treatment, ideally you can get 4 grams out of an ounce. So you would do like a full pound, get you like 64 grams, roughly 56, 64 grams, somewhere in there, and that would be enough, would be like a round of treatment. But as you hear, as I'm saying, it takes a lot of material. That's why I like to say, grow your own, make it yourself. That's always going to be the cheapest way to do it. There we go. Now, when you're doing this, a lot of people will say for 1 ounce, you'll do the first rinse with half of it, and then the second with half. Really, what it boils down to is you just want to completely cover the flour. You don't have to, go all out. Just enough till it's all submerged. All right, and at this point here, there's another point of contention I can talk about before I start agitating. Different thoughts on time length. Some people say shorter times are better, get less chlorophyll, the oil will taste better, it'll be cleaner. Some people like a more thorough extraction to get a better yield. And I mean, I literally have heard of people like putting it in there for like a month, 2 months, 3 months. That's excessive in my opinion, but as again, play with the times, find out what works for you, I usually will do like an overnight soak, where I go in and I shake the jar up ever so often, and then the next day I'm straining it out. But for the purposes of the demonstration, I'm just going to do kind of the original method, which is just a quick, like 15-16 minutes of going at it a little bit. And we can talk a little bit about some of the other stuff to consider. Now, a person on a cancer treatment protocol, it's said it's best, they want to get up to where they're eating 1 gram a day as quick as they can possibly, as quick as they can tolerate, more if they can. And that sounds kind of crazy, but you have to understand that THC, CBD, along with other cannabinoid compounds, these together produce apoptosis. This means cellular suicide for the cancer cells. Meanwhile, it preserves healthy cells. So one of the compounds I've found that I've just from talking to people, a lot of this is anecdotal and things you can research, and really, Israeli cannabis research is probably got the most data on this as it stands. But basically, this is a very potent compound for killing cancerous cells in the body. I've got friends same friend who had less than a year to go. You don't got to do it the whole time, but just ever so often, you just kind of get a little bit of that. I had a friend who another friend who was given less. Literally, they said at most you could be looking at a year, but ideally, or not ideally, but I think honestly you could even be less than a week. Like the guy had a year up to a few days, and just by the grace of whatever, whatever your preferred universal power. By the grace of that, he came across the Rick Simpson story. There's a video out there if you're interested in RSO. I recommend anybody to watch. It's called Run from the Cure. It talks about this guy Rick Simpson in Canada who made what he refers to as high potency hemp oil. Because it's a Canadian thing. High THC hemp oil. The Canadians, they're referring it to as hemp. But he's talking about cannabis, of course. But it's a very interesting video. I mean, he goes through the same process. He uses, I believe, isopropyl alcohol, which, personally, probably a better solvent. I think you got to worry about. It's not good to ingest if you don't cook it off all the way. If you don't cook this off all the way, it'll be a little bit spicy. You just kind of leave the lid off for overnight and let some of it evaporate off until it's not so spicy.
Not so spicy.
I think what else here. So one of the things you may find if you're going through, say, a protocol for Crohn's, or you're going through a protocol for, say, some kind of stage 3 or stage 4, you may find that you need more of the oil than your tolerance allows you to ingest. So a solution for that is when you make this oil, it's to infuse it with coconut oil. Then there's 2 applications that can come with that. Is you can use the coconut oil to make suppositories, which I know for some people, as soon as you mention suppositories, they like shift in their chair a little bit. But it's like you know what? It's your life. You know what I'm saying? And it's the best way to get a large amount of THCA. Now THCA is not as potent in terms of with the cell death, but you can take a whole heck of a lot more of it because it's not psychoactive. So that's great to supplement with whatever you're eating during the day.
Now, Kyle, is there a reason that you're using this manually instead of using like a beater?
I could use a beater. I'm just doing it manually just because it's a low tech kind of. One of these is like a couple $dollars at the store.
Yep. So this is minimal. So if someone did want to use, if they had a beater at home, they could use that for this part of the process.
Right.
But you're just showing the most, like you said, the most low tech, most accessible way to make this oil in the safest way.
Sure. And right here, if I didn't use this, I just use my electric oven. And if you're going to use the oven, I recommend using an electric oven. You don't want to use a gas oven. But if I just use my electric oven, this was like maybe $12. This thing at Family Dollar. This crock pot. So I mean, the most expensive thing really is the Everclear. That's about $20.
Gotcha.
So we're just about halfway home. We got 6 minutes left.
And how much time was it total on the stir?
I put it on for 16 minutes just because that number stuck in my head for some reason. But I've been reading, I think 15 is sufficient.
So how about we give everybody a recap, just a quick 1, 2, 3 on the steps you've taken so far.
Okay, so first step is what you'll do is you'll break your flour up on a baking sheet. You break it up by hand, right? Is how I prefer to do it. You can use a grinder, just make sure you bang it out good at the end. Then you take that, you decarb it. If you're using the oven method, 240, 45 minutes, sufficient. And keep the foil on there because it's just how people have told me to do it. This is how I always do it. I think there's a reason for it. I just don't remember. Once you decarb, you pull it out of the oven. You stick it in your container, and then you wash with the Everclear up to this point. So decarb. So it's break up, decarb, wash and stir up to this point. Now, something I should talk about before we get to that point is another thing that folks will say is they usually will do 2 washes. You do this, once I squeeze this out in here, they will do a second wash that's like a quick wash. It's just basically you dose it in there, you shake it around, and then you put it back through. Other folks, again, with the same thing, with using a shorter time, it's, get less of the chlorophyll and so forth out, just to make a cleaner product. For the purposes of time, I'm going to do a single wash today, but it doesn't make, again, it makes an incremental difference in terms of total yield, but how much is, I think, could be debated, because I know people who have done very, very short washes, and then they'll swear up and down that their yield was hardly different. Others, folks will swear to you that you got to do it. So it's, again, find your method, but just, you're getting the basic steps here. And also, I got 8 minutes. And also for the cook down, it'll be a little faster. Now that is, like I said, that's the longest thing here. Is the well, here in this video right now it's gonna be this, but once I strain it, squeeze it out, and put the tincture in here to cook down, at least a couple, 2-3 hours, and you're gonna want to stir ever so often, maybe every. I just because I hover a little bit, just because I'm paranoid. I don't want it to anything to stick on and burn or what have you. I stir usually every like 20-30 minutes until we get down within that last. So last night I washed a 1/2 ounce, which is what this is, and I did 2 washes, and so the amount that cooked down, it took about 4.5 hours to cook down. So when I got inside that last 2 hours, I was more frequent with the stirring, just to kind of keep everything, kind of, because one of the things I'll do, and give that a rest for a second. One of the things I'll do is, because you'll notice on these crock pots, this one's pretty flat, but a lot of them aren't. They're kind of like rounded on the bottom or concave. So just to kind of think of it like if it's a bowl, you get kind of everything cooking on kind of the same level, so you don't have some that's cooking down way faster and getting burned a little bit maybe, and some that's you get the idea. So just kind of keep it all kind of on the same. You'll legitimately kind of tilt it a little bit like this. Now this one, it's got kind of like a tripod thing, so if I put it up like that, it's not going to go anywhere, and it's got no flame on it, so you're not going to worry about it. That's the beauty of this. No chance of like a fire or anything like that. If you use a double boiler method, you got to be a little more careful, especially if you're going over an open flame, that is, like a gas oven. Like if you had an electric oven and a double boiler, that will work too. So if you didn't have a crock pot and all you had was, like a pot to boil some water in, and it's like a metal bowl, mixing bowl, you could do that too. Just about home. So one other thing to talk about. Now I will say that RSO is, as I think I mentioned earlier, it's got kind of a strong taste. Or no, I didn't mention this, but it's got kind of a strong taste. So if it's, say you're giving it to an elderly loved one that's, I would never tell anyone to drug anyone, but I've just anecdotally have heard stories of people saying, yeah, I couldn't get Dad to eat, mixed in a little bit with his applesauce. He tried it, and it just made him feel better, and he's able to eat a whole meal. You hear that type of story quite a lot. And sometimes that's the main complaint from, the fastest growing demographic of cannabis users are the elderly, people 55 and over. And typically they don't like to smoke it, they like to use edibles. They like to use edibles, and like I said, RSO, it is probably most effective in terms of if you got MS, if you got cancer, if you got lupus, if you got osteoarthritis, For me, I could say the first time I took a good dose of pure, clean RSO, honestly, I kind of had a similar effect to like how when opioids would kick in, and quite frankly, it's interesting because at the time I was experiencing stress and craving. It's one of the things that you contend with in that situation, and immediately afterwards, though, all that resided, and I was just able to be baseline again. So I think in terms of if someone's trying to maybe wean down off opioids, this is probably the best thing that I would recommend. That, or even just a high CBD, like a full spectrum high CBD. You can or full spectrum CBD paste or something like that. There's a lot of different companies around that make them. Alice CBD is one that I like. It's the one I like the best, honestly. But there's other brands out there. Just one thing I'll say is research what you're buying. A friend of mine was in Save-A-Lot recently and found for $1 40 milligram CBD gummies. I don't know if there's any CBD in it or not. That's something I wanted to talk about. Wanted to talk about ratios here. So THC, when you're talking about fighting cancer, THC tends to get most of the focus because, if you look at, say, like Raphael Mechoulam's research, he really gives it a lot of praise in terms of like shrinking tumors and stuff. However, in more recent years, CBD's, been found to be how important that is. And of course, more and more people are understanding this, especially with the CBD boom kind of. More and more people are educated, at least on CBD and how effective it is for different things. I will say that even whatever you're talking about, always good to have, a hunk of CBD in there. Some of the best RSO I've ever had. I think the ratio came out to be like 56. There's like 57% THC and it had like 20-some% CBD. Very effective. Alright. So one of the things you might consider doing when you get into this, so something like this, you could certainly make more than just enough for 1 ounce. You could even a couple ounces. So what you may do is if you find some high CBD, like a 1-to-1 ratio kind of flower, you might kind of use that as like a baseline, and then you could throw in, some higher THC strains to kind of just boost that aspect of it. We've got a minute left. So, how about this weather, huh?
and we finally get to it.
Right.
Now, when you were talking about, were you also including omega-3s earlier?
Oh, no, I didn't mention anything about omega-3s. Yeah, they're important. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about this. I'll just say I'll say it like this. Like I know a good bit, but I'm definitely not an expert. So please, anybody, if anything I said was inaccurate or was off, please don't hesitate. I know the internet works. If it's off, it's already happening, right?
Right.
And jump in there. This is what this is all about. It's education. Let's be respectful. Let's have open-minded sharing of knowledge. So, and I'm human. I make mistakes. But the point I make with that is to say that this doesn't take a vast amount of knowledge. Here you go. To know how to do it. A lot of people that have been messing with cannabis a while, they've probably made weed cookies or weed brownies. If you can make any of those things, you can make what I'm making right here. All right. So this is the part right here where you're going to strain it out.
All right. From one mason jar to the next.
Well, normally I would use I would actually put like a calendar, but this setup works too. I actually forgot my my colander.
Wow.
But cheesecloth, you get it at any hardware store. The paint section usually works very well. So here we go. Alrighty. Alright. So this is the fun part. You know, I got it layered. I got about 4 pieces layered in here so that I've got a good mesh to filter through.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to give this a couple of little squeezes just to kind of get everything out of there. One of the things, the person who taught me how to do this, so they said, taking so you don't get your hands messy. When you got it sitting in the counter, you can take the bottom of the jar actually and use that as kind of a, primitive smashing tool. But I kind of just twist it up and give it a couple of good little squeezes. This is where, what I am going to do just a little bit of a second wash, just because I got this voice in my head telling me just to do it, just because I've always done it. And it's not like it's wrong or anything like male circumcision. Joking, I don't want to ignite a whole thing about it.
I don't think this is the crap of it anyway.
Just saying, it is a little weird. Alright, that's needed here.
Yeah. And there you have it.
So,
second wash.
So I'm just going to do, not even do like a full thing, just enough just to get a little more.
Just enough, Everclear.
I don't want the cook down to be super long. And I'll just kind of get one of these.
Right on.
Alright, just like that. Alright, so.
If you're just now joining us, we're at the color. I'm your temporary cameraman, Span. We are here. You're currently looking at. This is the second wash, right?
Yeah, that's just the second quick rinse. So what you're looking at here technically would be, you'd call that like green dragon tincture.
Green dragon tincture.
Right, and so it's because the cannabis was decarbed and all that, you can use it as such right now. And so that's where I was talking a moment ago about if you use, say, like a 1-to-1, CBD and THC flower as, say, like your base, and then you came in with, like, I don't know, some high THC, sativa type strain.
Right.
Something like, or just anything that has a high THC. Really, it doesn't matter, Steve, indica, whatever, but but maybe that's something too where, if the thing you're wanting to target is chronic pain, for instance,
right,
maybe you look for strains that are high in, I'm getting this everywhere, that are high in, like lemony.
Right.
Or maybe you find strains,
Indeed.
yeah, with just different linalool. Is that, as I'm saying that right?
don't
Help me out, internet. I'm butchering that.
Making some RSO, indeed.
Okay,
In fact,
so
we've got a couple different types of RSO going on. We're outside right now.
all right, so here we go.
The green dragon tincture. There's another RSO setting up inside.
So right here, basically, this is going to be kind of not quite the last step, but this is going to be where we and things. I'm gonna kind of set her up like so. So you got to kind of lean like that. And so far to recap, we broke up by hand, we decarbed, rinsed, strained, did a second quick wash, strained again. Okay, and this is what we have here. Just kind of like so. All right. And kind of
Don't waste the draw.
sure, yeah. Okay, and so basically we put the crock pot. I already had it heating up a little bit so that it'll start cooking down pretty much immediately. Because they take time to heat up. But basically you put the crock pot or the rice cooker on your lowest setting right here. All right, and that's about 200 degrees if it's functioning properly. And you kind of leave the lid off, kind of like so. And basically, you can walk away. Now you can go take a smoke break. Go catch one of your an episode of your favorite sitcom. And just I recommend I use a spatula, like a rubber spatula. Kind of stirring ever so often. About every I do. Again, like I said, because I hover, I probably stir more than you need to. I like every 20 to 30 minutes. But then like this will probably take 3 to 4 hours to cook down. So for the first couple hours, after that, once it starts getting kind of a little bit lower, if you look right in here, once it starts getting to where I actually need to get it kind of up more like that. But once it starts to get to where it's got the halfway point, that's when I'll come in and just start stirring more frequently. Just checking on it more frequently, because you'll start to see, I don't know what you call it, but I call it just like a little like a tide line. It looks like like kind of when it's low, when the tide's coming back, you'll see like a little ripple, and it's this just kind of the oil, and you just kind of scrape it down. So that's that, and you'll stir it until it gets saucy, thick, al dente, as they say in the culinary world. And by way of TV magic, I have the other half ounce that we already cooked down. And you got a little bit of this, some flour in there. And you can see it's just kind of a black, thickish. I mean, it looks like oil, frankly. And you just eat it.